It's time for the two paths. This is going to be dependent on you and which path you take. From this point forward, you either know React or you don't know React. And we've structured this course in a way that is accommodating to everybody. So let's say you've worked with React before on the web. You know React, you've learned about components, about state and props, and you know what those things are. Then you can proceed with the course and just move on to the next lecture. And we're going to start assuming that you know basic React and we're going to teach you React Native. However, if you've never worked with React before, you're still not sure what it is, or you just want to refresh the fundamentals of what React is and why React is used for building UIs, then we've created an appendix section. So you can jump to the bottom of the course in the appendix where it says Learning React and start doing those lessons. Once you finish those and you have the fundamentals of React, you're able to build things with React, then you can come back to this lesson and continue with the course. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. You see, React initially was built for the web. So React as a library was used to build web pages. Then React Native came along to be able to do the same thing we did on the web, but also natively on mobile. So in React, we would use something like div or a p or image tag, all HTML tags to build components. But on a phone, there's no HTML because it's not the web, right? The idea of React Native is to build for a phone. And on a phone, there's no HTML, there's no browser. I mean, there is, but we're building native apps. So when you use something like div with React Native, well, you can't. You have to use views or text or something like this. So on the web, you would often use something called React DOM to render something on the DOM or on the web page. With React Native, use React Native to render something on the mobile app. Initially, React had the library React DOM for the web, but they eventually got split into two. So on the web, you would use React and the React DOM library, and on mobile, you'd use React and the React Native library. So if we go back to our example here, you may notice a few things that are different than if you were using React on the web. One is that obviously there's no React DOM. Instead, we're using React Native. Then we notice that we're not using HTML tags, we're using native React Native components, so view and text instead of a div or a p tag. Next, we see that we have this thing called StyleSheet. StyleSheet is a way that React Native does styles. So we use this format of stylesheet.create, and then we create a new style class using this object notation. Now you'll notice here that we're not using the regular CSS way of writing margin top, which will be margin dash top. Instead, we're using camel case, which is native to JavaScript. And we also don't have any idea of pixels here. Again, React Native simplifies things for us. It just says 50 and it tries to optimize it based on the operating system, based on the screen for us. So it makes things a lot simpler. But once we learn this difference between working with React on the web and working with React on mobile, all the other principles are pretty much the same. It's just components with other components, using them together to build interactive UI. Welcome back. I want to talk quickly about some of the options that you have when you're working and building a mobile app. With React Native, the first choice is, do you want to test on your device or do you want to test on a simulation? And we're going to see both of these throughout the course. Now, on your device, you obviously get to actually physically see the app on your phone, which is really, really nice. But sometimes that takes a bit of time for it to get transferred to your phone. Or you can use a simulator on your computer so that it simulates both Android and iOS so that you can get fast feedback. Another option is to use the Expo app, which we're going to show you how to do. You can either fully compile your code into an app on your phone, or you can use the Expo client. So that is, you download the Expo app on your phone, and then you can really fast ship your React Native code to that Expo client, and that Expo client app is going to load up on your phone as if you're running that app. But underneath the hood, it's the Expo app that's displaying your application. Now, why would we want to do something like this? If we go to setting up the developer environment section on the React Native documentation, you'll see that we have two options. The React Native CLI, so that is without using the Expo client, or using the Expo CLI. Now we'll walk you through the installation steps here, but always know that you can refer to these documentation and go through everything that you need. Now the reason we use Expo in this course is that it makes it super easy for you to run and test your applications, but we also make sure that all the students can do this course. You see, if we just do the React Native CLI method, there's some limitations. For example, on Windows, you need to actually have a Mac to even build an iOS app. So on Windows, if you have a Windows machine, you can't create a iOS app. It's just the rules that Apple has come up with. And there's also a lot of installation steps that you'll need. For Mac OS, for example, you'll need Xcode. For Android, you'll need Android Studio. So we're going to do Expo CLI because it allows us to make sure that everyone taking this course can actually follow along. But don't worry, because this Expo CLI, which I actually have downloaded over here, I've run these commands and I will show you how to do that later on as well. But I want to show you something quickly. This Expo client, if we go to package.json, has a few options for you to be able to run your code. You can run your code on Android, you can run on iOS or a simulation, you can even run it on the web, which is a new feature. So if we look at the dependencies, we see that we have React, we have React DOM because we have the option of running it on the web as well. And then we also have React Native for running it on iOS and Android. But if you ever want to not use Expo and actually build apps through Xcode or Android Studio, which is what iOS and Android recommend, you can always do npm run eject. And what this does is it allows you to eject from an Expo app. And what we'll see is that we actually get native Android code right here and native iOS code right here. So we can load up the iOS code through Xcode or Android code through Android Studio. So although we use Expo in this course, nothing's going to prevent you from ejecting these apps and working on native by itself. So there really isn't any downside to Expo. As a matter of fact, I usually recommend the path of starting with Expo, and then when you're ready, you can eject from Expo and build any professional app that you want.